let's get into some ATF rules and how they're going to be affected. So Adam Nicholson asks, I'd love to know what the likely legal challenges are to the pending pistol brace rules. Or why don't we just give, I think a couple of people had asked about pistol braces, right?
Yeah.
And what's the state of them? What's going on? How might they be impacted by this ruling? And well, first off, just the state of them. It seems so. The ATF, in a legal filing in a Second Amendment Foundation case, said that they have finished reviewing 200,000 plus comments on the pistol brace ban rule, and I think they're formulating their final rule now. But they're expecting it to drop in December. The final rule. It wouldn't go into enforcement until sometime next year. Most likely is usually there's like 90 to 120 days before these things go into, are enforced. But, similar to the ghost gun rule, which is still not enforced yet, right, even though the final ruling has been made public. But, so that's actually a delay, because it was everything that we had heard was August. And so now it's December. Of course, the ATF is kind of in flux right now, because they just demoted the acting director at the request of basically the gun control groups who didn't like him, and they have another acting director who's also a U.S. attorney in Arizona. So he's they kind of have like a part-time acting director right now, and of course, Biden's permanent director is he's still waiting for his full vote in the Senate, although it seems very likely that he will be confirmed at this point, because the vote to move him from the judiciary, the vote in the Judiciary Committee was a tie, so all the Republicans opposed him and all the Democrats voted for him. But the vote to discharge him to a full floor vote was, I think it was like 52 in favor. So it's extremely likely he will get at least 50, if not 51 or 52.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened yet. And I think that a couple of senators have had severe injuries. I think Kramer cut his hand off. Yeah. Or had something close to that.
Yeah, a catastrophic lawn accident or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy. Although I think he's going to be back relatively soon. But was it Leahy?
Yeah,
fell
from
and broke
Vermont.
his hip?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because all these people in the Senate are like 99 years old. So literally a senator broke his hip by falling. So I think that might actually have some impact. I saw a Washington Post reporter was saying, I can't remember, but I think it was Du Bois. And he's a top Hill reporter. So he said that might slow the timeline down. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, the brace rules, it seems like they've been pushed back. Won't go into effect until at least next year. So, and then as far as I think these next two questions are similar to, are all going to be the same basic question, which is, we got JB Sumner and Ben Leonard, and they're asking about the ruling in West Virginia versus EPA, right? And how that has an effect on the ATF's ability to promulgate these sort of regulations.
Right.
And how that might affect, the brace situation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in the EPA?
Sure. Yeah. So the whole deal in the EPA case was essentially the Environmental Protection Agency under Obama. So this dates back to an Obama era regulation, very broadly construed an obscure portion of the Clean Air Act in order to promulgate rules that created a de facto cap and trade program and, blah, 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 blah. I won't get into too many environmental details for this podcast, but essentially what the court said was, hey, you can't do that without explicit authorization from Congress, because this rule would have substantial economic and political implications. And when that happens, it's what's called the major questions doctrine. Expect the court to take a closer look at what your statutory basis is for doing these regulations. And they said, you don't have it here.
Yeah. Do you think do you think this sort of pistol brace regulation rises to that major questions standard?
I could see an argument for it, because as we've written in our reporting, there are millions of these pistol braces out there. A lot of gun owners own them. So you could make the argument that, hey, this is going to have severe economic and political implications because you're criminally prohibiting something that millions of people legally own. At the same time, the statutory basis for their actions are a little more firm than it was in the EPA's case, like the NFA.
Right.
There are explicit definitions of what a short-barreled rifle is as it pertains to the NFA. And if the ATF is just saying that we're going to interpret braced pistols with the barrel length that fits the same as short-barreled rifles, I think that's an entirely different calculus here than what was at issue in the EPA case.
Right, because I think one of the key things in the EPA case was that the cap and trade proposal that the EPA sort of unilaterally put in place themselves using this vague statute, that proposal was debated and rejected by Congress a bunch of times. Like that was like one of the main environmental policies that Congress has been fighting over for years. And so the fact that they never actually passed it and then the EPA came along and basically did it on their own without really statutory authorization, that's a little different than the ATF changing its view on what constitutes, what fits this definition of, short barrel rifle.
Right.
Although obviously there's probably a case to be made that you could see it being challenged under that, I think, and under Bruin.
Yeah.
Although if you challenging it under Bruin, you'd have to challenge the whole NFA, which again goes back to this question of whether the Supreme Court would go for that, because they've been pretty, at least ancillary comments, they've been pretty comfortable saying the NFA and other federal gun laws are constitutional to this point. But so maybe the EPA thing might even be a better challenge than
could be
going the Bruin.
I would say definitely expect people to try in litigation. I would just say have cautious optimism if you think that's going to be the winning ticket for dismantling the regulation. Would be my final take. And
then let's do real quick. We have Kazan Basum is not his full name, but he asks, it's a member that asks, please describe the exact new rules surrounding ghost guns. I've heard so much bad information. I don't know what to believe. I would love to hear what this new regulation includes and doesn't include. So what we have a piece on the Reload that gets into more detail on exactly what the ghost gun rule change does, but effectively it really goes after ghost gun kits. And so essentially you cannot sell, they're interpreting a ghost gun kit as an actual firearm. Yeah. So if you have the 80% lower and you have the jig and the tools to complete the 80%, and you sell that all together, or you put it all together in a kit, then it becomes a firearm, and it's subject to all the regulations of selling a firearm. So basically like Polymer 80 or somebody, they can't sell you a kit anymore. But it doesn't make ghost guns illegal. It doesn't make it illegal for a person to possess an unserialized firearm. Now there are state laws that are going that route. And that's another thing that actually is probably going to be implicated by Bruin, frankly. Because I don't know that there's any historical analogy for that sort of regulation that's, saying that you can't.
In fact, it'd be quite the contrary, I think, since self-manufacturing of firearms is so, old as a tradition.
Right. So. And it was probably the main way people got guns in the founding era. So, but yeah, now effectively it doesn't like if you have ghost guns now, if you have unserialized firearms that you previously built, as long as your state doesn't ban them in some way or place further regulations, the new rule doesn't impact you. It impacts perhaps what you can buy. Yeah. Because you can't go out and buy the buy, build, shoot kits anymore. Although they were already coming under heavy scrutiny anyway.
Yeah. Local jurisdictions were always ATF, suing them. And
Yeah. But that's mainly what it does. Is it goes after kits. It sort of uses this new, very broad definition of firearm, which that might have some EPA. That the EPA case might come more into play there, because of what the ATF is claiming as its authority for to defining what a firearm is. Even though they're saying now that they're not necessarily going to practically change how they've done things the last 50 years, the authority they've given themselves is extremely broad.